Well, thank you very much, Tom. That was very generous, excessively generous. It really is a privilege and a pleasure to be in front of all of you folks. This is such a wonderful legal community. On this side of 60, I've been looking back over my career, and really one of the highlights is dealing with and being a part of this wonderful legal organization. Indeed, a pleasure and a privilege, and a particular privilege tonight to introduce to you our Franklin G. West Award winner. It's been an exciting moment in past dinners when we introduced the winner, and by the way, I've seen this done over 35 times, over more than 35 years, which is longer than a lot of you have been on this earth. It used to be exciting because we didn't know who it was going to be until the introduction, and would listen for clues in the introduction. Smart people figured out it's the guy at the table in the front, the gal at the table in the front with his family here. So now we introduce it ahead of time and the mystery is gone. But it still is an exciting moment. And it's an exciting moment, folks, because it tells us what we value in a person. It tells us the characteristics that are important to us. And you could pick no better candidate to express what's important to this wonderful legal community than our winner here for the year 2013. Frank Fermat had a very humble origin. He was born in Cuba, and when Castro came to power, his parents took the great risk of sending their child to the United States without them so that he would escape Castro's Cuba. There was the hope, but not the guarantee that his parents would later join up. So here was a very young boy in the United States in a Catholic orphanage, couldn't speak English, didn't have his parents with him. Well, through God's grace, his parents were later able to come to the United States. He was reunited with his parents in November 1961. The young Frank Fermat thought how appropriate it was that his new country celebrated this holiday called Thanksgiving, right after he was reunited with his parents. And from that time forth, we have an incredible American story when we watch and follow the career of Judge Fermat. A typical American story of success and prestige, but more important, a true American story of service to his community. Service to his community, service to this community. You know, when President Carter was inaugurated, he made famous the phrase that we should do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Many judges and lawyers like that phrase, do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with our God. Judge Frank Fermat lives that message every day of his life by every fiber of his being. His father was a judge, and he entered the legal profession here in California at a very precocious age. I think it was 35. He became a judge here in Orange County, and of course immediately began doing justice. But that mercy part came in. I can't help but think it was a reflection of that poor, lonely, parentless child in a new country where he didn't speak the language, feeling lonely, frightened, afraid. And throughout his career, Frank Fermat has reached out to those who have felt lonely, frightened, afraid. Those who aren't necessarily the successes, those who need to have justice tempered with mercy. If there was a program and an organization he could join to advance this cause, he did it, and usually rose to the top. If there wasn't such a program or organization, he started it. If you read through his bio, you can get the details of all the programs and organizations that he's been involved in, that he's led, that he's organized and formed. So throughout his career, he's done justice as a judge, and he's also provided mercy, and it's been reflected in awards. One of the most coveted awards for judges, as far as I'm concerned, is the Aranda Award, given to the judge each year who best exemplifies and supports the cause of access to justice. Judge Fermat has received that award, which is important to me, partly because he deserves it, but partly because here's an Orange County judge honored across the state for his achievement. I always like that, being a part of this community. The Orange County Bar Association has previously recognized his service by giving him the Scoville Award. He was one of the first winners of the Scoville Award. So we have the success, we have the prestige. I must say he's a wonderful family man. I've had the pleasure here of sitting at his table with his wife Laura and Mark and Allison. He's got his son Frank Jr., he's got a grandchild Grace, and his second grandchild is sitting at the table, soon to be delivered into the world. Wonderful family man. So he's done justice, he's loved mercy, and he's also walked humbly with his God. If you know Judge Fermat, you know that's an important part of his life. When I see great men like that, and I'm kind of a student of great people, when I see a great man like Frank, I ask, what's been his motivation? What's driven him? Where has he drawn his energy? And I think it's come from his humble walk with God. I think that foundation is what has allowed him to care so deeply about all sorts and conditions of humans. I think it's that foundation that makes it hard to categorize Judge Fermat as on the left or on the right. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's not the left or the right, it's just goodness. It's that foundation, I believe, that has allowed him to give so selflessly to this great legal community. And because of all he has done, it is truly appropriate that we honor him as the 2013 winner of the Franklin G. West Award. So please join me in showing your appreciation to my friend, my brother, the Honorable Francisco Fermat.
Me da un inmenso placer estar con ustedes esta noche. There was a time when I could only speak that way. In 1961, I found myself on a plane from Miami to an orphanage in Denver, Colorado. On the plane, I had a note on my chest that said, "My name is Francisco Fermat. I speak no English. Please make sure I arrive at St. Vincent's Home for Boys Catholic Orphanage in Denver, Colorado." And through God's grace, my parents were able to get out of Cuba sometime later, and I'm here today. And I'm here today not because I'm great, but because America is great. America is great. Because those early dreams of democracy and those statements by Jefferson in that wonderful Declaration of Independence, we're still striving, we're still evolving towards being the best country in the world. And I'm getting this award not because I'm great, but because I'm small. I've been a judge now for 27 years. And my first year on the bench, I realized I am inadequate for this job, totally inadequate. Oh, I had the intellect, and I had the diligence, and I had the zeal and the excitement for the work. But I lacked the most important thing required to be a judge. I lacked the wisdom to do the right thing. And that took me to prayer. And I remember praying, "God, give me an understanding heart to judge your people, to tell between right and wrong." That's that famous prayer of Solomon. And I found myself praying that prayer of St. Francis that many of you in this room know, that starts, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." And I found myself praying also for God to take away my ego needs that interfered with wisdom with my ability to judge cases well. My ego need to be respected, to be liked, and there's nothing wrong with being respected and liked. Yet, if that's what drives me, I'm going to taint some of these cases. Some cases are going to get hometowned. Some cases are really not going to get quality of justice. And I prayed for God to take away from me my ego need to be successful. Nothing wrong with being successful. But a judge who tries to be successful is going to try to move cases, statistics. And you're not statistics. You are real situations in people's lives that deserve a different kind of treatment. And I found myself praying for God to take away my ego needs to be right. Even that one. Nothing wrong with being right. But you see, as your case steps into my courtroom or starts a settlement conference, if I know I'm right, before I really hear everything out, then you really don't get quality of justice. And I found myself praying to have a servant's heart, to serve, to have the quality of presence where I could serve you rather than rule over you. And I found when I started praying in that way that the burden of the job started falling away and that wonderful things started happening in my courtroom. And then something happened in my early 20s that really changed my life. I had a vision, an angel. She was blonde with blue eyes. She wore a blue jeans and a hang ten t-shirt really well. And I have an image engraved in my memory of her wearing a brown leather miniskirt, still engraved there. She was witty, charming, articulate, smart, kind. And when she smiled at me in that certain way, it was as if sunshine and a fresh breeze came into me. We've been married now 37 years. And my wife, Laura, would you stand up, Laura? Would you wave? And also with us is my daughter, Allison. She's in her 20s now, and she's with her husband, Mark Hallowell, and very proud and to have Mark Hallowell in our family. And it's amazing. We see these little girls at the age of 5 and 6, and at the age of 6, I remember playing with her Long John Silver, the pirate. There must be treasure in this room. Let's search for it. And now she's over 20 years later. We can't play that game anymore. But I have a 6-year-old granddaughter, and we're going to be playing Long John Silver. I retire next month, and on February 25, it'll be my last day. If you wanted to say hello to me tonight and you couldn't find your way to my courtroom between now and February 25, and I'd love to say hello. What I said earlier about prayer, I'd like to say it in a somewhat different way. I don't think law schools prepare us well for the task of being lawyers, the task of being judges. Law schools teach us about issues, about files, about briefs, about cases, about fees. And when I graduated from law school and started practicing law, I thought I was a pretty good lawyer, but I found out later on I was pretty mediocre. It was only when I realized that it's not about issues or files, it's about the people. It's about the people. It's about the clients. And so then my focus changed. It's about helping people, not processing files or issues or cases or winning arguments. It's about the people. And that made me a better judge when I focused on the people. But then later on in my career, I saw a quote from Mother Teresa. And a journalist came up to Mother Teresa and said, "Mother Teresa, it is so wonderful the way that you help the poor and the dying." And Mother Teresa looked at the person in the eye and said, "I don't help the poor and the dying. I serve the poor and the dying." And I think that's the difference. If we have a focus that we want to serve, it changes everything. If we merely want to help, we're going to manipulate the results of what we think is right. If we decide that we want to serve, we will listen, we will notice, we will be patient, and somehow, the quality of your presence when you bring that servant attitude will change the outcomes in ways that are extraordinary. And so I am here because I prayed to be small, and in some ways I have succeeded in being small, in being a servant. I'd like to close by reminding you of something. We have too many naysayers nowadays complaining about all the things we could complain about, the Republicans, the Democrats, the Congress, the NRA, and on and on and on. And there's a lot of naysaying. And I want to remind you of something. Only 1 in 20 people in the world get to live in America. You do. There are millions of people, probably 1 billion people in the world who wish they could live in America. They don't get to. You do. You didn't earn it. You didn't deserve it. You just get to live in America, this wonderful country where we have freedom and resources and safety, and we can live without fear. But for you in this room, it gets even better than that, because you get to live in California. Only 1 in 10 Americans get to live in California. There are people living in Montana right now. The guy who watched the Rose Bowl and say, "Martha, we're going to California this next year." This state has more great hospitals and great universities than any country in the world. Sources of creativity, Silicon Valley, Hollywood. My son-in-law, Mark, was part of a creative endeavor. He worked on a new game called Call of Duty recently. Just put that out. He was working 16 hours a day, I think, till the game came out. But for you, it gets even better than that, because you get to live in Orange County. Only 1 in 10 Californians get to live in Orange County. There are people living in Bakersfield right now. Who wish they could live in Orange County? But for you in this room, it gets even better than that. Because a very small percentage of people have the gifts of intellect, finances, and time opportunity to go to law school and pass that dreadful California bar exam, and you have. And you have. So much has been given to you. If I were to put a pyramid, you would be at the very, very tip. And you who have given so much, I'd like to remind you how important it is for you to give back. And I would want to mention that you give back through legal aid or the Public Law Center, do some pro bono work. America is a great country. but we really have not achieved democracy yet to this day. It is the greatest democracy in the world, but we're in a process of evolution. It's a great document that was written in the 1700s, the Constitution, but it's not being lived yet. 150 years ago, we had a great civil war because we were not living that yet. There was enormous injustice affecting large numbers of people. 100 years ago, we had suffragettes marching on the streets. Women were second-class citizens in this country. 50 years ago, Reverend Martin Luther King was in a jail in Birmingham, Alabama, because we still have not reached the democracy, the access to justice that we should have in this country. Today, there are people in Santa Ana and Orange County who do not have access to justice, who do not have the dreams of a democracy because they do not have access to a lawyer. These are people who can lose their families, who can lose their assets, car, their possessions, roof over their head because of the lack of a lawyer. And you in this room, who have been given so much, want to encourage you. Place a call to the Public Law Center. Give a few hours of your time. It'll change a life. And you will find, probably, greater satisfaction in those pro bono cases than in the ones that end up paying your fees. And I'm not just telling you to do that. I retire on February 25. I expect to do some private mediation work, and I vow, and I will, every month, I will do some pro bono work myself. I wouldn't expect you to do anything that I will not do myself. And if any of you in this room do volunteer for the Public Law Center, write me a note. I promise I'll write you back. Okay. And so I'd like to close with, this is great. We get to live in America, California, and Orange County, in this great legal profession. We've been blessed so richly. But for me, it gets even better than that, because you see, I got the girl. I got the girl. And after 37 years, she still likes me. And after 37 years, when she looks at me and smiles in that certain way, I still get sunshine and a fresh breeze in my heart. I do. But for me, it gets even better than that. Because you give me this wonderful award today, and I receive it with the knowledge that I succeeded in being small. Thank you. God bless you all.
Let me just say, for those at the pinnacle, those of us in the legal profession in the greatest county, in the greatest state, in the greatest country the world has ever known, you're even more blessed, because I figure it's maybe 1 out of 900 at that pinnacle get this award. So here you go.